For years, I lived my life afraid of one question: what will people think of me? Then one day, I realized something painful. I was living everyone's life except my own. For many years, I thought I was living my own life. I went to work. I paid my bills. I made plans. I smiled. I said I was fine. From the outside, everything looked normal. But there was one problem. I was always thinking about what other people thought of me. Before I said something, I asked myself, will they like it? Before I made a decision, I wondered, what will they say? Before I tried something new, I thought, what if people laugh at me? I did not know it at the time, but I was living with a quiet fear. The fear of being judged. My name is Ethan. I was 35 years old when I finally understood how much of my life I had given to other people's opinions. It did not happen in one big moment. It happened slowly. One small choice after another. And for a long time, I did not even notice. I grew up in a simple family. My parents were kind people. My mother loved flowers. My father loved trees, books, and long walks in the evening. They did not have much money, but our home was warm. When I was a child, I loved drawing. I could sit for hours with a pencil and a piece of paper. I drew houses, trees, people, small streets. Sometimes I drew strange places that existed only in my imagination. My father always smiled when he saw my drawings. You have a good imagination, he used to say. I believed him. When I was young, I did not think about being good or bad. I simply enjoyed drawing. But when I became a teenager, something changed. One day, I showed a drawing to a classmate. He looked at it and laughed. That house looks strange. Another boy said, why do you draw like a little child? They were only a few words. But I remembered them. That evening, I put my drawings into a box. I stopped drawing in front of other people. Slowly, I learned a lesson that stayed with me for years. If people might laugh, don't do it. If people might disagree, don't say it. If people might think you are strange, hide it. I did not know that this small fear would follow me into adulthood. When I finished school, I wanted to study literature. I loved books. I loved stories. I wanted to write one day. But when I told people about my dream, some smiled. You should choose something more useful. You need a stable job. Writing is difficult. You may not make enough money. I listened. I chose a safer path. I studied business. I found a good job. I became good at my work. People respected me. My salary was fine. I had a nice apartment. I wore clean clothes. I looked successful. But there was something missing. I did not feel free. At work, I often had ideas. But I was afraid to share them. I thought, what if my idea is stupid? What if they disagree? What if they think I am not smart? So I stayed quiet. Sometimes someone else said almost the same thing. Everyone liked it. And I sat there thinking, I could have said that. But I did not. After work, I often wanted to do things for myself. I wanted to learn English better. I wanted to play guitar. I wanted to travel alone. I wanted to write stories. But every time I thought about doing something new, the same questions came back. What will people think? My friends liked expensive restaurants. I preferred quiet cafes. But sometimes I went to expensive places because I did not want them to think I was boring. Some people loved parties. I preferred staying home with a book. But I went to parties because I did not want people to think I was lonely. Someone asked me about my career. I told them I was happy, even when I was not. Someone asked me about my plans. I gave them answers that sounded impressive, not answers that were true. I had become very good at creating a version of myself that other people would like. The strange thing was, most people were not asking me to do this. They were simply living their own lives. I was the one imagining their opinions. One Friday evening, I went to dinner with some old friends. There were 6 of us. We had not seen each other for several months. Everyone talked about work. One friend had bought a new car. Another had moved to a bigger apartment. Someone else had started a new business. They talked about money, travel, success. I listened. Then someone asked me, "So, Ethan, what are you doing these days?" I smiled. "I'm doing well. What's next for you?" I paused. I did not know. I had a good job, but I did not love it. I had many things, but I was not sure what I wanted. Still, I smiled. Maybe I'll move to a bigger place next year. I said it because it sounded like the right answer. My friend smiled. That's good. Everyone continued talking, but I became quiet. On the way home, I thought about my answer. Why had I said that? I did not even want a bigger apartment. I liked my home. It was small, but it was peaceful. Why had I felt the need to impress them? That night, I could not sleep. I walked into the kitchen. I made a cup of tea. Then I sat at the table. The apartment was silent. I looked at my phone. There were messages from friends. Pictures from dinner. Everyone looked happy. I looked at the pictures for a long time. Then I turned the phone off. For some reason, I felt tired. Not physically. Deep inside. I was tired of trying to be someone I was not. The next morning, I decided to visit my parents. Their house was about an hour away. When I arrived, my father was in the garden. He was standing beside the old apple tree. The tree was taller now. Its branches moved gently in the wind. He looked at me. "You look tired." I smiled. Everyone keeps saying that. Maybe they are right. We sat beneath the tree. My father poured me some tea. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. Then he asked, "What is wrong?" "Nothing." He smiled. "You always say that when something is wrong." I laughed quietly. Then I told him everything. I told him about dinner, about my job, about my dreams, about how often I worried about what people thought. When I finished, my father looked at the apple tree. Then he asked, "Do you know what happens if a tree tries to please everyone?" I laughed. "Trees don't think like that." "Exactly." He touched one of the branches. The tree does not ask the birds if its branches look good. It does not ask the wind if its leaves are beautiful. It simply grows. I looked at him. He continued. A tree does not change its shape every time someone looks at it. His words were simple, but they stayed in my mind. Then he went inside. A few minutes later, he came back with a small brown notebook. I recognized it. It was the same kind of notebook he had once used to help me understand where my time was going. He placed it in my hands. "This time," he said, "don't write down your time. What should I write? Write down the moments when you change yourself because of someone else's opinion. I looked at the empty pages. He smiled. For 1 week. I laughed. That sounds strange. Maybe. But try. I put the notebook in my bag. Before I left, my father said one more thing. Your life is like this garden. I looked around. If you spend all your time asking other people which flowers you should grow. He paused. When will you have time to grow your own? I drove home quietly. The notebook sat beside me. I did not know it yet. But those blank pages were about to show me how much of my life I had spent trying to be accepted. The following Monday, I started the experiment. The first example happened before breakfast. I wanted to wear an old blue shirt. It was comfortable. I liked it. But I looked in the mirror and thought, what if someone at work thinks it looks old? So I changed it. I wore a newer shirt. I wrote in the notebook. I changed my clothes because I imagined someone's opinion. At work, my manager asked for ideas. I had one. It was simple. But I stayed quiet. I wrote. I did not speak because I was afraid people might disagree. At lunch, my coworkers wanted to eat at a busy restaurant. I wanted to eat outside. I said nothing. I followed them. I wrote. I ignored what I wanted because I wanted to fit in. That evening, a friend sent me a message. Are you free tonight? I wanted to stay home. I was tired. But I thought, if I say no, maybe he will think I don't care. So I said yes. I went out. I smiled. I laughed. I came home tired. Then I wrote. I said yes because I was afraid of disappointing someone. By Wednesday, the notebook was filling quickly. I began to see something painful. I was making many small decisions every day. Not because I wanted to, but because I was afraid. Afraid of being disliked. Afraid of looking strange. Afraid of disappointing people. Afraid of being seen as unsuccessful. Afraid of being alone. The fear was everywhere. But because it was made of small moments, I had never noticed it. On Thursday, something happened at work. My manager asked me to give a short presentation. Normally, I would prepare every sentence. I would worry about my voice. I would worry about my clothes. I would worry about whether people were listening. This time, I tried something different. I prepared the important points. Then I told myself, I don't need everyone to like me. My heart beat quickly when I stood in front of the room. I looked at the people. I could feel fear. But I started speaking. My voice was not perfect. I made one small mistake. Someone looked at their phone. For a second, my mind said, they don't like you. Then I stopped. I took a breath. Maybe that person was simply tired. Maybe they had a message. Maybe it had nothing to do with me. I continued. When I finished, my manager smiled. Good job. One coworker said. I liked your idea. Another person asked me a question. I answered. Then I sat down. My hands were still warm. But I felt proud. Not because everyone had liked me. Because I had spoken even though some people might not. That was new. That evening, I wrote in my notebook. Today I did something while feeling afraid. I looked at the sentence. It felt important. Maybe courage was not the absence of fear. Maybe courage was doing what mattered while fear was still there. The next weekend, I returned to my parents' house. My father was working in the garden. I showed him the notebook. He read several pages. Then he looked at me. "What do you see?" "I see that I think about people too much." He smiled. "That is only half the lesson." "What is the other half?" "You are learning that other people are not thinking about you as much as you think." I laughed. "That sounds strange." "It is true." He pointed toward the road outside the garden. "Everyone has their own worries. They worry about their money, their family, their work, their health, their future. They may look at you for a moment, but then they return to their own lives." I became quiet. I remembered something. I could not remember what most people had worn at dinner the previous Friday. I could not remember what shoes they had worn. I could not remember their small mistakes. Why? Because I had been thinking about myself. Maybe they had been doing the same. That idea made me feel lighter. My father continued. "Don't build your life around an audience that is not even watching." I smiled. That sentence stayed with me. When I returned home, I tried another small change. I went to a cafe alone. I ordered tea. I sat by the window. For years, I had avoided doing things alone because I thought people might look at me. That day, I opened my English book. I read slowly. A man at another table looked at me. For 1 second, I thought, "Does he think I'm strange?" Then I smiled. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. It didn't matter. I continued reading. That was one of the most peaceful cups of tea I had ever had. A few days later, I took out my guitar. I had not played in front of anyone for years. But I decided to practice again. My fingers were not very good. The sound was not beautiful. I made many mistakes. But I kept playing. Then my neighbor knocked on the door. I stopped immediately. My old fear returned. What if he heard me? What if he thinks I'm terrible? I opened the door. He smiled. I heard the guitar. I felt embarrassed. Sorry if it was too loud. He laughed. Why are you sorry? I don't know. He smiled. My daughter is learning piano. She makes mistakes all the time. But she loves it. Then he said, "Keep playing." I closed the door. I stood there for a few seconds. Keep playing. Such simple words. But they felt like permission. Permission to be imperfect. Permission to learn. Permission to enjoy something without being good at it. That night, I played for 30 minutes. I made many mistakes. And I smiled through all of them. Slowly, I began to understand. Living for other people's opinions does not always look like fear. Sometimes it looks like perfection. Sometimes it looks like always trying to look successful. Sometimes it looks like never saying no. Sometimes it looks like being afraid to start. Sometimes it looks like pretending to be happy. And sometimes it looks like saying, "I'm fine," when your heart is asking for help. I started to practice one simple question. Do I want this? Before saying yes. Before buying something. Before making a plan. Before agreeing with someone. I asked myself, do I really want this? At first, it felt selfish. But then I learned the difference between selfishness and honesty. Being honest about what I want does not mean I don't care about others. It means I also care about myself. One evening, a friend invited me to a large party. I looked at the message. My first thought was, I should go. Then I stopped. Do I want to go? The honest answer was no. So I wrote, thank you for inviting me. I won't come tonight. I need a quiet evening. I stared at the message before sending it. My heart beat faster. I expected my friend to be angry. He replied, no problem. Enjoy your evening. That was all. No argument. No drama. Nothing terrible happened. I laughed. I had spent years afraid of a problem that did not exist. That night, I stayed home. I made dinner. I played guitar. I read a few pages. Then I called my mother. It was a simple evening. But I felt peaceful. For the first time, I realized something important. Saying no to someone else can sometimes mean saying yes to your own life. The changes were small, but they were becoming stronger. I stopped checking my phone every few minutes. I stopped changing my plans because someone might judge me. I started saying what I really thought. Not in a rude way. Just honestly. I also started asking myself a new question. If nobody knew about this choice, would I still want it? That question changed many things. Would I still want the expensive watch if nobody saw it? No. Would I still want to learn guitar if nobody heard me play? Yes. Would I still want to study English if nobody knew? Yes. Would I still want to write stories if nobody praised them? Yes. The answers surprised me. They showed me the difference between what I truly wanted and what I wanted people to see. One morning, I decided to write a short story. I had wanted to do it for years. But I was afraid. What if it was bad? What if people laughed? What if nobody liked it? For many years, those questions had stopped me. That morning, I opened my laptop. I wrote one sentence. Then another. Then another. I did not think about publishing it. I did not think about money. I did not think about success. I simply wrote. For 2 hours, I was completely lost in the story. When I finished, I read it again. It was not perfect. There were many things I could improve. But it was mine. I smiled. That feeling was different from praise. It was quieter. Deeper. I had done something because I wanted to do it. Not because I wanted someone to approve. A few weeks later, I showed the story to my father. He read it slowly. When he finished, he looked at me. You finally started. I laughed. Yes. Are you afraid? Yes. Good. I looked at him. He smiled. Fear means it matters to you. I thought about that. Maybe I had spent too many years trying to remove fear before taking action. Maybe I could simply take action with fear beside me. My father returned the pages. It doesn't matter if everyone likes your story. What matters is that you were honest when you wrote it. His words stayed with me. Honesty. That was becoming more important than approval. At work, I also changed. I still cared about doing good work. But I stopped trying to impress everyone. If I did not know something, I said, I don't know. If I made a mistake, I said, I made a mistake. I'll fix it. If I disagreed, I said, I see it differently. The first time I disagreed with a senior coworker, I was nervous. He looked at me. I don't agree with your idea. The old Ethan would have immediately changed his opinion. This time, I stayed calm. That's okay. He looked surprised. We talked. We found a better solution. Nothing terrible happened. In fact, he respected me more. That taught me another lesson. You do not lose good relationships because you are honest. Sometimes, honesty makes them stronger. Of course, not everyone understood my changes. One friend told me, "You've become different." I smiled. I think I have. You used to say yes to everything. I know. You used to care a lot about what people thought. I know. He looked at me. Don't become selfish. His words hurt me. For a moment, my old fear returned. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should go back. Maybe I was becoming a bad person. That evening, I called my father. I told him what happened. He listened. Then he asked, "Did you hurt your friend?" "No." "Did you lie to him?" "No." "Did you stop caring about him?" "No." "Then what did you do?" I told him the truth. My father was quiet for a moment. "Then you are not becoming selfish. You are becoming honest." I closed my eyes. Those words helped me breathe again. Not everyone will understand your growth. Some people are comfortable with the old version of you. Especially when that version always says yes. When you change, they may feel uncomfortable. But their discomfort does not mean you are wrong. That was one of the hardest lessons for me. I had always believed that being a good person meant making everyone happy. Now I understood something different. You can be kind without being controlled. You can love people without copying them. You can listen to advice without giving away your own decision. You can respect someone and still choose a different path. One Sunday afternoon, I visited my mother in the garden. She was cutting flowers. I helped her. After a while, she said, "You seem more like yourself now." I smiled. "What does that mean?" "When you were younger, you laughed more." I looked at her. "Really?" "Yes." "Then you became very serious." "Why?" "I don't know." She smiled. "Maybe you started trying too hard to become the person everyone wanted." Her words touched me. Maybe she was right. I remembered the boy who drew pictures. The boy who wanted to write. The boy who played outside without worrying about how he looked. Where had he gone? He had not disappeared. He had simply become quiet. That evening, I went home and opened the old box where I had kept my childhood drawings. I took one out. It was a picture of a small house under a big tree. The house was not perfect. The lines were not straight. The tree was too large. But I loved it. I placed the drawing beside my desk. Then I opened my notebook. I wrote. Maybe growing up is not about becoming someone new. Maybe it is about returning to the person you were before fear told you to change. I read those words again. Then I smiled. The next morning, I wore my old blue shirt. I looked in the mirror. It was still comfortable. It still looked good. But more importantly, I liked it. At work, I shared an idea. At lunch, I chose the quiet cafe. After work, I went home instead of going to a party. That evening, I played guitar. Nobody applauded. Nobody took a picture. Nobody said I was talented. And it was one of the best evenings of my life. Because for once, I was not performing. I was living. A year passed. My life was not perfect. I still worried sometimes. I still cared what people thought. I still had days when I wanted everyone to like me. I was human. The difference was that I noticed it now. When fear came, I did not immediately obey it. I stopped. I breathed. Then I asked, what do I really want? That question became a quiet friend. It helped me make decisions. It helped me say no. It helped me say yes. And most importantly, it helped me hear my own voice again. One morning, I received an email from an old friend. He had heard that I had started writing. He asked, "Are you making money from it?" I smiled. "No." "Then why are you doing it?" I looked at the question for a long time. Then I wrote, "Because I love it." I sent the message. No explanation. No apology. Just the truth. That small answer felt like freedom. Later that month, my company offered me a promotion. The position had more money, more responsibility, more status. A few years earlier, I would have accepted immediately. This time, I thought carefully. Would I be happy? Would I have time for my family? Would I still have time to write? Would I still have time to learn? Would I be accepting this because I wanted it? Or because I wanted people to think I was successful? I talked to my parents. I talked to my close friends. Then I made my decision. I accepted the promotion. But I changed the way I worked. I protected my evenings. I learned to say no to unnecessary meetings. I stopped answering work messages late at night. I did not need to prove that I was always available. I wanted to be a good worker. But I also wanted to be a good son, a good friend, and a good person to myself. Some people at work understood. Some did not. That was okay. I was no longer trying to make everyone agree with my life. I was trying to live it honestly. One evening, I sat beneath the old apple tree with my father. The sun was going down. The garden was quiet. I told him everything that had changed. He listened. Then he asked, "Are you happier?" I thought about the question. Yes. Why? I smiled. Because I stopped trying to be happy in other people's eyes. He looked at me. And I started asking myself what makes me happy when nobody is watching. He smiled. That is a very important question. We sat quietly. The apple tree moved gently above us. I remembered his old words. A tree does not change its shape every time someone looks at it. It simply grows. For years, I had done the opposite. Someone looked at me. I changed. Someone laughed. I stopped. Someone disagreed. I became quiet. Someone wanted something. I said yes. Someone expected something. I tried to become it. I had spent so much time looking at other people's faces that I had forgotten to look at my own heart. Now I understood. Other people's opinions are not always bad. Sometimes people give us good advice. Sometimes they see things we cannot see. Sometimes they love us enough to tell us the truth. But advice is not a command. An opinion is not a fact. And someone else's dream does not have to become your dream. That was the freedom I had been searching for. Not freedom from people. Freedom to be myself around people. One weekend, I went back to the cafe where I used to sit alone with my English book. The same window. The same quiet music. The same warm tea. I opened my notebook. On the first page, I saw an old sentence. What will they think? I smiled. Then I turned to a new page. I wrote. What do I think? I stared at those words. They looked simple. But they meant everything. I no longer wanted to build my life from the outside in. I wanted to build it from the inside out. I wanted to know what mattered to me. What I loved. What I believed. What I wanted to learn. What kind of person I wanted to become. And then, I wanted to live that life. Not perfectly. Just honestly. A few days later, I met an old friend who had known me for many years. He looked at me and said, "You seem calmer." I smiled. I am. What changed? I thought for a moment. I stopped trying to win a game nobody asked me to play. He laughed. What game? The game of making everyone like me. He became quiet. Then he nodded. I think many of us play that game. Maybe he was right. Maybe many people wake up every morning and silently ask, am I good enough? Do they like me? Am I successful enough? Do I look happy enough? And maybe we spend years trying to answer questions that were never ours. That is why I want to share this lesson. Not because I have everything figured out. I don't. I still have difficult days. I still hear the voice of fear sometimes. But now, when it says, what will they think? I answer. Maybe they will think something. And that's okay. Because people are allowed to have opinions. They can like me. They can dislike me. They can understand me. They can misunderstand me. They can agree with my choices. They can disagree. That is their freedom. And I have mine. I can choose my path. I can change my mind. I can say no. I can start again. I can learn something new at 35. I can play guitar badly. I can write stories that are not perfect. I can sit alone in a cafe. I can wear an old blue shirt. I can choose a quiet evening. I can dream a dream that nobody else understands. And I can still be a good person. One evening, I went back to my childhood bedroom. The old drawings were still there. I picked up the picture of the small house beneath the big tree. I looked at it for a long time. Then I smiled. I finally understood what that little boy had known. He did not need anyone's permission to draw. He did not need anyone to tell him the picture was good. He simply loved creating it. Maybe that was the life I had been searching for. A life where I could enjoy something without needing applause. A life where I could make a choice without asking everyone to approve. A life where I could be quiet without feeling ashamed. A life where I could say, "This is who I am." And not immediately add, "Is that okay?" I put the drawing back in the box. Then I closed the lid. I was not trying to become that little boy again. I was simply taking back something he had never lost. His freedom. Today, when I make a decision, I still listen to people I trust. But I also listen to myself. When someone gives me advice, I say, "Thank you." Then I think. When someone disagrees with me, I listen. Then I choose. When someone does not like me, I feel sad sometimes. But I continue. Because I finally understand something that took me many years to learn. You can spend your whole life trying to be liked and still be misunderstood. You can spend your whole life trying to look successful and still feel empty. You can spend your whole life trying to make everyone happy and forget to ask yourself if you are happy. So now, I ask a different question. Not, what will they think of me? But, am I living a life I can respect? That question is quieter. But it is much more important. If the answer is yes, I can keep going. If the answer is no, I can change. I do not need 100 people to approve. I only need the courage to be honest with myself. My name is Ethan. For many years, I lived as if my life were a performance. I chose clothes for other people. I chose words for other people. I chose plans for other people. I chose dreams for other people. I smiled for other people. And somewhere along the way, I forgot what my own smile looked like. Then one day, I stopped. Not completely. Not perfectly. Just enough to hear my own voice again. I learned to say no. I learned to say yes. I learned to make mistakes. I learned to be ordinary. I learned to be alone. I learned to be myself. And strangely, the more I stopped trying to impress people, the more peaceful I became. The more honest I became. The more real my relationships became. The more I accepted myself. The less I needed everyone else to accept me. That is what freedom feels like to me now. It is not being alone. It is not ignoring everyone. It is not saying, I don't care what anyone thinks. I still care. I am still human. Freedom is simply knowing that someone else's opinion does not have the final word on your life. You get to choose. You get to grow. You get to change. You get to become the person you truly want to be. So if you are listening to me now, and you often worry about what people think, I want you to remember something. Most people are busy living their own lives. They are thinking about their own problems, their own dreams, their own fears. They may notice you for a moment. Then they move on. Do not spend your whole life afraid of an opinion that may disappear in 5 minutes. Do not give away years for the fear of a few seconds. Wear what you like. Read what you enjoy. Learn what you want to learn. Say no when you need to. Say yes when your heart says yes. Try something new. Make mistakes. Start again. And if someone laughs, let them laugh. If someone disagrees, let them disagree. If someone does not understand, give them time. But do not abandon yourself just to make someone else comfortable. Your life is your garden. You cannot grow every flower. You cannot make every person happy. You cannot control every opinion. But you can choose what you water. You can choose what you give your attention to. You can choose what you want to grow. And one day, when you look back at your life, I hope you do not see a life built around the question, what did everyone else want from me? I hope you see a life built around a quieter question. What was true for me? Because in the end, the goal is not to make everyone like you. The goal is to know yourself. To respect yourself. To live honestly. And to go to sleep at night knowing that the person you showed the world was really you. That is the life I am learning to live. Not the perfect life. Not the life everyone understands. Just my life. And for the first time, that is enough.